Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yasharanandana Raja Janarandana Yasharanandana Raja Janarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Vanamangsa Pravraj Jagachajas Satar Sata Shri Śrimad The Divine Grace of our Charanavindra Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Founder Chai Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki BBT Founder Chai Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Savior of the whole world with Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to some devotees. All glories to some devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. Continued reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. Additional this is volume 6. What happened to our additional pastimes? There they are, at the very bottom. The chapter entitled A Visit to Boston. Let's see, where were we up to? Okay, so where Prabhupada is in visiting a university, it's Northeastern University. And how do we remember that? Because it has a dog at the entrance, a bronze dog, a husky. That's their mascot. So this is loud enough, Jai, but if you want to check the sound on that, make sure it's, huh?
What city is that?
Boston. This is a visit to Boston is a chapter title. About 200 students and a few teachers crowded into the pews of the small chapel. Wow, 200 students. While Prabhupada sat cross-legged on a cloth-covered table, Satrup led the kirtan playing on a one-headed drum. After the kirtan, Prabhupada leaned forward to the microphone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he began to lecture about the three aspects of the Absolute Truth, which he compared to the three aspects of the sun, the sunshine, the sun globe, and the sun god. Although the absolute truth is one, some persons see him as impersonal, all-pervading light. Some see him as the localized super soul in the heart of all beings, and some see him as Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada's talk was very philosophical. Digressing, Prabhupada began talking more about the sun. He said that on the sun there was a presiding deity, Vivasvan. You can't disbelieve it, Prabhupada said. And he quoted the Mahabharata that on the sun are living entities with bodies of fire. Just as certain living entities have bodies adapted to living in water, so there are living entities that live in fire. The big noonday crowd listened politely. Prabhupada concluded his half-hour lecture by explaining God, the Supreme Being, as the origin of the material, external, and spiritual internal energies. We living entities, although spiritual, have marginal position. All of us in this material world are covered by the external energy. The prayer of Hare Krishna means, "Oh my dear Lord, I am your part and parcel eternally, but some way or other I have fallen into this ignorance of material energy. Kindly lift me up to the spiritual energy." Although Prabhupada invited the audience to stay afterward and speak with his disciples, when the bell rang, the lecture abruptly ended, and most of the students immediately left the chapel to make room for the next group of students. It was the academic factory. Class is over, and Swamiji and his followers should now leave. Must have been some class, huh? As Prabhupada was walking down the hall, the wife of one of the college administrators joined him, walking at his side and chatting pleasantly and effusively, assuring him that everyone at the university was very glad he had come. She walked with him to the door and then shook his hand. Turning to Satsrup, she exclaimed that everything had gone beautifully, that Swamiji had spoken wonderfully, and that she would send a $100 honorarium in the mail. Feeling excited and successful, the devotees accompanied Prabhupada to the car, riding back to his house. Prabhupada agreed it had been a successful engagement. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, 4th Canto, Part 1, Chapter 3, Text 23, chapter titled, Talks Between Lord Shiva and Sati. This is a very nice verse. Prabhupada quotes this many times. We'll chant it quickly and then we'll read because the purport is extensive. Have you read this purport, Ryan? Ryan's read everything. Sadvang Vishuddhang Vasudeva Shabditang Yad Iyate Tatra Pumana Pavrata Sadve Chitasmin Bhagavan Vasudeva Sadve Chitasmin Bhagavan Vasudeva Yad Hokshajo Me Namasa Vidiyate. Please chant. Satvang Vishuddhang Vasudeva Shabditang Yadiyate Tatra Pumana Pavata Sadve Chitasmin Bhagavan Vasudeva Yadyokshajo Me Namasa Vidiyate Sadvang Vishuddhang Vasudeva Shabditang Yadiyate Tatra Pumana Pavataha Sadeva Chatasmin Bhagavan Vasudeva Yadokshajo me namasa vidiyate Sadvang Visudhang Vasudeva Shabditam Yadiyate Tatra Pumana Pavrita Sadve Chatasmin Bhagavan Vasudeva Yadokshajo me namasa vidiyate. Anyone else want to do it twice? Dr. Ryan, could you grab that door? Sadvam, consciousness. Vishuddhang, pure. Vasudeva, Vasudev. Shabditam, known as. Yat, because. Iyate, is revealed. Tatra, there. Puman, the Supreme Person. Aparvata, without any covering. Sadve, in consciousness. Cha, and. Tasmin, in that. Bhagavan, Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vasudeva, Vasudev, he, because. Adhoksajaha, transcendental. May, by me. Namasa, with obeisances. Vidiyate, worshipped. Translation and purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I am always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudeva in pure Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is always pure consciousness in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Vasudeva, is revealed without any covering. Please repeat. I am always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudeva in pure Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is always pure consciousness, in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Vasudeva, is revealed without any covering. Purport. The living entity is constitutionally pure. Asango Yayang Purushak. In the Vedic literature it is said that the soul is always pure and uncontaminated by material attachment. The identification of the body with the soul is due to misunderstanding. As soon as one is fully Krishna conscious, it is to be understood that one is in his pure original constitutional position. This state of existence is called Shuddha Sattva, which means that it is transcendental to the material qualities. Since the Shuddha Sattva existence is under the direct action of the internal potency, in this state, the activities of material contamination stop. For example, when iron is put into fire, it becomes warm, and when red hot, although it is iron, it acts like fire. Similarly, when copper is surcharged with electricity, its action as copper stops, it acts as electricity. Bhagavad Gita 14:26 also confirms that anyone who engages in unadulterated devotional service to the Lord is at once elevated to the platform of pure Brahman. Mam chayo vyabhichanena bhakti yogena sevate saganantamatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Therefore, Shuddha Sattva, as described in this verse, is the transcendental position, which is technically called Vasudeva. Vasudeva is also the name of the person from whom Krishna appears. This verse explains that the pure state is called Vasudeva because in that state, Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is revealed without any covering. To execute unadulterated devotional service, therefore, one must follow the rules and regulations of devotional service without desire to gain material profit by fruitive activities or mental speculation. In pure devotional service, one simply serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a matter of duty, without reason, without being impeded by material conditions. That is called Shuddha Sattva or Vasudeva, because in that stage, the Supreme Person, Krishna, is revealed in the heart of the devotee. Srila Jiva Goswami has very nicely described this Vasudeva or Shuddha Sattva in his Bhagavad Sandarbha. He explains that Ashtatara Shata 108 is added to the name of the spiritual master to indicate one who is situated in Shuddha Sattva or in the transcendental state of Vasudeva. The word Vasudeva is also used for other purposes. For example, Vasudeva also means one who is everywhere or all-pervading. The sun is called Vasudeva Shabditam. The word Vasudeva may be utilized for different purposes. Whatever purpose we adopt, Vasudeva means the all-pervading or localized Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita 7.19, it is also stated, Vasudeva Savamati. Factual realization is to understand Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and surrender unto Him. Vasudeva is the ground wherein Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is revealed. When one is free from the contamination of material nature and is situated in pure Krishna consciousness or in the Vasudeva state. Vasudeva, the Supreme Person, is revealed. This state is also called Kaivalya, which means pure consciousness. Jnanam Sattakam Kaivalyam. When one is situated in pure transcendental knowledge, one is situated in Kaivalya. Therefore, Vasudeva also means Kaivalya, a word which is generally used by impersonalists. Impersonal Kaivalya is not the last stage of realization, but in Krishna consciousness Kaivalya, when one understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one is successful. In that pure state, by hearing, chanting, remembering, etc., because of the development of knowledge of the science of Krishna, one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All these activities are under the guidance of the internal energy of the Supreme Lord. The action of the internal potency is also described in this verse as a pavataha, free from any covering, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, His name, His form, His quality, His paraphernalia, etc., being transcendental or beyond material nature, it is not possible to understand any one of them with the materialistic senses. When the senses are purified by the discharge of pure devotional service, Rishikena Rishike Sevanam Bhakti Uchite, the pure senses can see Krishna without covering. Now one may inquire that since factually the devotee has the same material existential body, how is it possible that the same materialistic eyes become purified by devotional service? The example as stated by Lord Chaitanya is that devotional service cleanses the mirror of the mind. In a clear mirror one can see one's face very distinctly. Similarly, simply by cleansing the mirror of the mind, one can have a clear conception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 8.8, Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena, by executing one's prescribed duties in devotional service, Chaitasa Nanya or simply by hearing about God and chanting about Him, if one's mind is always engaged in chanting and hearing, Yeshwara Govinda Ki Jai, and is not allowed to go elsewhere, one can realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead as confirmed by Lord Chaitanya by the Bhakti Yoga process. Beginning from hearing and chanting, one can cleanse the heart and mind, and thus one can clearly see the face of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Shiva said that since his heart was always filled with the conception of Vasudeva, Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of the Supreme Lord's presence within his mind and heart, he was always offering obeisances unto the Supreme Godhead. In other words, Lord Shiva is always in trance, samadhi. This samadhi is not under the control of the devotee. It is under the control of Vasudeva. For the entire internal energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead acts under his order. Of course, the material energy also acts by his order, but his direct will is specifically executed through the spiritual energy. Thus, by his spiritual energy, he reveals himself. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 4.6, Nambhavam Yatmamaya, Sambhavam Yatmamaya. Atmamaya means internal potency. By his sweet will, he reveals himself by his internal potency, being satisfied by the transcendental loving service of the devotee. The devotee never commands, my dear Lord, please come here so that I can see you. It is not the position of the devotee to command the Supreme Personality of Godhead to come before him or to dance before him. There are many so-called devotees who command the Lord to come before them dancing. The Lord, however, is not subject to anyone's command. But if he is satisfied by one's pure devotional service, he reveals himself. Therefore, a meaningful word in this verse is adhoksaja, for it indicates that the activities of our material senses will fail to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by the attempt of one's speculative mind. But if one desires, he can subdue all the material activities of his senses, and the Lord, by manifesting his spiritual energy, can reveal himself to the pure devotee. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead reveals himself to the pure devotee, the devotee has no other duty than to offer him respectful obeisances. The Absolute Truth reveals himself to the devotee in his form. He is not formless. Vasudeva is not formless. For it is stated in this verse that as soon as the Lord reveals himself, the devotee offers his obeisances. Obeisances are offered to a person, not to anything impersonal. One should not accept the Mayavad interpretation that Vasudeva is impersonal. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, prapadyate, one surrenders. One surrenders to a person, not to impersonal non-duality. Whenever there is a question of surrendering or offering obeisances, there must be an object of surrender or obeisances. Om Jnana Tamandasya Gananjalashlakaya Suksha Tasma Shri Guru Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lankaite Gurum Yakipatam Hambande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. I like that image of Prabhupada leaning into the microphone at Northeastern University. Prabhupada knew that there would be some in the audience that would be touched, even though it was only half an hour lecture. It was clear that he understood how important it was to reach out to the college students. And the fact that there were 200 people in the lecture hall was very satisfying to the devotees and to the administrator who arranged it. So it's not that success means by how many people are there, but yet Prabhupada judged that it was successful, using that as one of the factors in consideration. Let's go over this verse with the long purport. This is the longest purport in the fourth canto that I've seen so far. Translation: I'm always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudeva in pure Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is always pure consciousness in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Vasudeva, is revealed without any covering. And so this goes back to the scene where Daksha cursed Lord Shiva because he failed to rise. And here Prabhupada explains that there was no need for Lord Shiva, even though externally he was the son-in-law, and the son-in-law is obliged to offer respect to the father-in-law. Lord Shiva was actually a superior personality, and therefore Daksha should have made that consideration. He should have been very grateful that he had such a wonderful son-in-law. But the fact is that he showed by his disregard that he was not a very realized person. And so it's said that someone who is realized, he can understand that Lord Shiva was in samadhi, this internal meditation. And it's not difficult. Occasionally we saw Srila Prabhupada exhibit that. One time he expressed to the devotees, he said, I don't do that very often. Because there was quite an uncomfortable sense when Prabhupada, upon the chanting Jai Radha Madhava, so this, the devotees just started chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram, Ram Ram, Hare, just chanting japa. And we see that this is not something that's controlled as it's described here in the purport. This is not controlled by the individual. This is directly controlled by Krishna. And so sometimes we see that there are those who will imitate this so-called Mahabhav, this ecstasy. But their behavior doesn't support this show of samadhi. And so one has to know by what are the symptoms. And we see that the symptoms are that there must be continuous internal meditation on the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. It's not something that you can fake. A person cannot be externally a joker, and at the same time that someone can respect that he has attained that Vasudeva, that Shuddha Sattva state of pure Krishna consciousness. Shuddha Sattva means pure, uncontaminated. Shuddha literally means pure in many respects. So we have this, we know by reading, we have these definitions. And so Prabhupada has given us the foundation to appreciate what are the symptoms of those who are becoming elevated in spiritual life. There's not that someone who's been for 10 years or 15 years or 50 years. In a lecture in Mayapur, there's that pastime after the killing of Hiranyakashipu. There's always a garland, somehow or other it manifests who had the garland. But the demigods were supposed to garland Lord Nrsingadev. But no one wanted to approach Lord Nrsingadev. His countenance was still blazing with the anger that had manifest specifically for that pastime. And it was such a ferocious appearance that everyone was terrified. Not just Hiranyakashipu, all the demigods were terrified. And so they had, it's sort of like there's the garland, and they went around, and Lord Brahma is trying to hand off the garland. Lord Shiva doesn't want to do it. Hand it off to another demigod, they don't want to do it. Finally approached Lakshmi Devi. She said, after all, he's your husband. But he said, I have never seen this manifestation. I don't know if he's my husband. And as a chaste wife, I cannot approach him. So even Lord Lakshmi Devi couldn't understand. No one had ever seen this appearance, this avatar. But Prahlad Maharaj could understand from within his heart who this personality was. After all, he was for him only, and that's what Lord Brahma said. So he gave him the garland, he said, for you only he has appeared. So therefore you should garland. And so of course there's that, we see in all of our temples, there's the picture of Prahlad Maharaj with the garland, looking up at Lord Nrsingadev, also in the painting is there. And then Prabhupada commented, so therefore we can understand from this that it is not by seniority. Because all the demigods, Prahlad Maharaj is a 5-year-old boy. He said, so it's not by seniority, it's by sincerity. So this was the key, and Prabhupada further exemplified that sincerity is that single most quality required for advancement in spiritual life. The single most quality. So it is not that one becomes an erudite scholar or a famous kirtaniya or so many other things that we tend to see as positions of some stature. No, it doesn't require. So what did Srila Bhaktisiddhanta? He exclaimed, better to be an honest sweeper in the street than a charlatan sadhu. A charlatan means this by pretending. He says, so this is that one has a genuine sincerity. He's not concerned with the external, how people see me, or that this service is beneath me, or something in that category. No. So we have to understand from the perspective of the pure devotee what he's emphasizing. So this is not, I can speculate that yes, maybe this quality is the, of course Prabhupada quotes here in this verse, the Lord Chaitanya said, Chaita Dharpana Marjanam, that to cleanse the mirror of the heart is the means to reveal the presence of Krishna as the super soul, as your guide. And so this is for the devotee in any case, this is a means of confirmation that I have achieved the most valuable situation, not out of pride or arrogance, but out of a completion of one's years, lifetime upon lifetime of journeys, that somehow or other finally I come home. So this sense of satisfaction gives the devotee the impetus to continue. He doesn't require anything external. He doesn't require that somebody has to come and pat him on the back and say, you're doing good. No, he from within, he's feeling this satisfaction. Tushanti cha ramanti cha. And amongst the devotees also, they're sharing these realizations. And that activity in and of itself, we say sadhu sangha, but what does a sadhu sangha mean? It means that there, by this constant hearing and chanting, this purification is extended into all the devotees who we're associating with. So it's just like multiples of realizations and purification. And so we're getting this advantage, just like Prabhupada gives an example of a businessman. He joins an association. Prabhupada gave the example of the Rotary Club. You know what the Rotary Club is? Dr. Ryan knows what the Rotary Club is. So they form these associations for what? For networking, to exchange ideas, tips and tricks, how to whatever, maximize their profit. So the devotees are also attempting to maximize their profit. And what is our profit? Our profit is that we have the most valuable commodity in the form of Krishna consciousness. You know, it's priceless. There is no way to, if someone said that I can give you eternal life, and what is the exchange? How can it be purchased? You know, we understand things in pounds, shillings, and pence, Prabhupada said. You know, on this level. But to get this most valuable gem of spiritual life, this is the apex of our journey. We've reached the climax, the zenith. There is nothing higher. But one has to feel that position without any external acknowledgement. It has to be completely internal. Otherwise, someone's requiring reinforcement. We see that sometimes when there's new devotees, they require more attention because their minds are not fixed. They have a tendency to consider things from a perspective limited by, how can you say, casual association with the absolute truth. And this casual association is just like we have hundreds of people coming to the temples. And they come in and they see the deities and they see the ceremonies. But for them, it's just on a level of tradition or ritualistic worship. And they don't understand the deep meaning behind the performance of these activities and how the purification is the benefit and the result, and not the act of performing these activities in themselves. Right? So we're doing everything under the guidance of the spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada said, disciple means discipline. And so we have to adhere to these regulative principles and chant 16 rounds. This is the protection that we've been cautiously given. Spiritual Master has handed us these things with great care and attention in order to give us the tools to make the change in our life and in the lives of others, simply by executing just the most basic activity of hearing and chanting. There's nothing else required. You know, but if we try to adopt too many different activities thinking that this will enhance my devotional service or this will enhance my devotional service. The only enhancement of devotional service is one's fixed determination, vyavasayamika buddhi ekehar kurunandana, because that gives one the necessary focus and attention, because that's literally what it means, that one pointed attention. Otherwise, what is the result? One's intelligence becomes many-branched. And how does that happen? Especially to a devotee. If he's chanting Hare Krishna, he's engaged in devotional service. But Krishna is giving us caution. That no, if you don't practice what the essence of this one-pointed attention is, that, what is that? Mam chayo vyabhicharena, bhakti yogena, that this is the goal, the means and the goal. That everything has to be there. There's nothing else. Krishna is not telling Arjuna, no, you should sit down here and you should study and you should do this. No, he just gives it straight to him. There's a 45-minute discourse. You know that, right? Bhagavad Gita took place in the course of 45 minutes, Prabhupada said. And he said, you need 45,000 lifetimes. That's what he told us. But for all we know, this is our 45,000th lifetime. And so we have to take the opportunity and understand that Prabhupada is giving us such this. And he's only asking these few things. He said, read this Bhagavad Gita. I've worked so hard and given these purports so that you can understand it as it is, without any adulteration, without any mental speculation, without any, what is that? Mat karma krin mat paramo mat bhakta sangha vajita nirvara sarva bhuteshu. Free from simple activities and mental speculation. Nirvara, and a friend to, without envy. So these are a few things that Krishna is telling Arjuna, and Prabhupada is emphasizing through his purports. And of course we see that some purports Prabhupada puts more emphasis, more detail, more thought, and more just explanation for our benefit. So instead of one paragraph, it's 3 pages, because it's obviously important to understand. And so we should look at it from Prabhupada's perspective, why he emphasized certain purports, certain verses, and see that he's giving us hints. He said, I wrote these books for you, for his disciples, for his grand disciples. And so when we come across, such elaborate purports, we have to take a little extra effort to try to understand every detail that Prabhupada is emphasizing. And so that we can utilize that within ourselves to when there's an opportunity, because everything we see here and all these personalities that are passing through the pages of Śrimad Bhāgavatam, they're there for us as examples, good or bad. So that when we can remember, oh yeah, we don't want to commit an offense like Daksha, who mistook Lord Shiva's, how can you say, so-called non-attention as disrespect, without understanding or appreciating. And so this is, we can't even imagine how, at times, Prabhupada related that story in a morning walk about, he was staying in the Bowery, not at the boy who was crazy, because he never became a disciple, but one of the other persons who became a disciple had also a place in the Bowery. When Prabhupada opened the refrigerator, he saw that there's meat. And he thought to himself, he said, so what should I do? He says, I can't. So these type of things is that from a practical perspective, Prabhupada is ready to do anything to push on Krishna consciousness. Anything. Even under such circumstances where he had to share this refrigerator with, and what did the devotee say? He told Prabhupada, it's not for me, it's just for the cat. It's just for the cat. But nonetheless, Prabhupada gave this example on the morning walk to show that he was undisturbed by these instances of, because you could say that, oh, you know that this person is a spiritual personality. Why would you keep meat in there? So this is certainly a form of disrespect, not just total, spaced out. Of course, all the hippies were spaced out at the time. But how spaced out do you have to be to realize that, we're all vegetarians, but they didn't see that meat as a contaminating, ingredient or influence, and, renders the entire refrigerator contaminated. Who can imagine circumstances like that? So in this way, Prabhupada was giving us so many practical, not to be disturbed in such situations, or any situations that we may encounter that somehow or other give rise to a sense of disturbance. And then Kali Yuga, everyone is easily disturbed. Manda sumanda matayo, manda bhagya upajuta. Lazy, misguided, unfortunate, short-lived, poor memory, and quarrel and hypocrisy. The slightest thing becomes an instigation. Even amongst family members. And what's the humorous thing? Is that in the last election, there are family members, they cannot be in the same room together because this person was a Republican, this person is a Democrat. Couldn't be at the same dinner table. So much, how can you say, bewildered by the modes of material nature. So that's what to speak, of this small, and people are ready to throw atomic weapons at each other, because of this bodily concept of life. But it begins on a small way by not seeing that what in relationship to my situation, where am I? And who am I associating with? These are not ordinary personalities. These are great souls who have come to the shelter of the pure devotee and to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We have an opportunity to serve such great souls. Mahat Sevaya. Mahat Sevaya. This is not something that we should think, well, no, if I have to choose, let me worship the deity and I'll, these other personalities, they're not as important. So this mindset is very, how can you say, degrading for one's spiritual life, that he makes such a distinction. So one has to be very careful in all circumstances. To serve the devotees is such an opportunity that what are the Mahabhagavats when they were paused in their Chaturmas journey? And who knows how many eons ago this was, but at that time Narada Muni had taken birth in a family of Sudra. His mother was a maidservant. No mention of the father or the caste or the servant, but they were engaged. He was engaged. She was engaged in serving these sadhus who stopped in that place in the rainy season of Chaturmas. And he took permission from them that if he could take the remnants of their foodstuff before washing the plates, before discarding the plates. And just by taking those remnants, just see how Narada Muni, and this is just an example, Narada Muni has a special place in, the associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But yet in that instance, he was simply a young boy coming from a not very elevated family. But because he was taking those remnants, so what is that? Prabhupada quotes that sloka, that sadhu sangha sarva sashtrakoy, lava matra sadhu sangha sarva siddhihoy. We want to speak of one moment. So we have the opportunity to associate with devotees 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So how much opportunity is there to serve? But if we think, oh, this person, no, he's not so advanced, I don't have to serve him. Or this person, no. Then one's mind becomes crippled. There's such an offensive conditioning to make some consider devotees to be on some material platform of advancement based on one's own small realization. And so this is the lesson we see here in this. And Lord Shiva is also trying to instruct his good wife that even in family members, and he gave some, what did he say? That one can hear those harsh words from an enemy because one expects it. But to hear harsh words from a family member burns like fire continuously because one is part of the family. And so it burned to such an extent, Prabhupada said she had to sever that connection completely. And the only way to do it was to commit suicide. So it's a very, very serious situation that one should carefully consider all these various ramifications of offending a devotee and how it went from, what it seemed to be just a simple thing, but actually it's never a simple thing. Bhāgavatam doesn't deal with simple things. When Ramaharshan, failed to pay the proper respects, he was also similarly, because he thought, I don't have to stand up. Who's this Lord Balaram guy? Who is he? And so he suffered the same fate, essentially, as Daksha, but in a different way. He was actually killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so he got liberation. But it was an example to all the sages, and for time immemorial going forward, that we should understand how these things can lead to death, spiritual death or material death. One's spiritual death is much more important. But one's this mad elephant offense is such a dangerous situation. And sometimes it is not known until after the fact, because one is, whatever reason, acting without consciousness, without proper, and that's what training does. It automatically trains us how to act in such a way to avoid offenses. We pay our obeisances to these great souls, all these sadhus that are, come to Prabhupada's shelter. And so simply by the training, we're avoiding so many offenses. But if one fails in his mind to exercise that respect at the wrong time or at the wrong place, then he's bound to suffer some result. And so you see how the first thing that we learn is how to offer our obeisances to the spiritual master. Such an important act to begin, and because without that, without crossing that threshold of understanding who the spiritual master is and how I should interact and relate, then it's very difficult to make advancement in spiritual life, practically impossible. One can advance in a certain impersonal condition, but he can never make any advancement in bhakti yoga. And therefore that means he can never stop the cycle of birth and death. Samsara dhavanala lila loka. This fire can only be extinguished by the mercy of the spiritual master. And so we have great hope and confidence in the activities that have been given to us through the parampara, how to conduct ourselves and how to enlighten others by presenting this philosophy in an unadulterated, unalloyed, and unmotivated. So these things, they have we have to be very careful to stick very closely to the original aspect and not deviate from Srila Prabhupada's instructions or his books. Even the tendency may be there sometimes to think, well, maybe I can present it in a better way. And once one thinks like that, his spiritual life is compromised. It may not happen now. It may not happen. It may never happen. But the point is, one has to be extremely careful. You know, if one feels, what is that? Lord Chaitanya said that my spiritual master considered me to be a fool. This is the Supreme Personality of Godhead coming as a devotee. And how is he giving us an example? He's saying that my spiritual master considered me to be a fool. That I should just remain humble, chant, and execute devotional service through this Harinam Sankirtan Jagya. And Lord Chaitanya, we see, he never portrayed himself as a great scholar. He never went out and tried to speak to an assembly of thousands of people. You know, in the situation with the sannyasis at Varanasi, he didn't seek out that situation. Rather, he was just there to pay obeisances to the sadhus from an external perspective. After all, they're the topmost leaders in society. And of course, that Dāsa Ghat and all those areas in Benares and the Kashi and the temple there, very famous. And so one can still go there and see these places, these pastimes, where Lord Chaitanya actually sat by the foot bathing area. And so, you know, but he did that in order to bring about a revolution. And we see that he did it in such a way, like I said, without calling attention and pretending to be something that they were trying to be, as known as scholars and logicians. You know, these people, the Veda Vatarata, simply trying to exploit the Vedas. No. Pure devotional service. And this is that, so again, that back to that Vasudeva Shabditam. Satbang Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam. Pure Krishna consciousness. And this is our goal. This is our only goal. There's no other intermediate goal. We're not trying to stop at a certain level and say, no, I'm satisfied here. No, we're meant to just become, by this act of becoming a servant, one receives fully the mercy of the spiritual master. And no one can get any greater degree of advancement than to get the mercy of the spiritual master. But we have to have that internal realization and not be seeking any other external. What is that? Nadanam, najanam, nasundarim, kavita, vajagadisha kamaye. So this mama jamini jamini ishway, who is thinking like that? Only the bhakti yogis, only those who are coming in the pure line. Otherwise, no one has that consideration. They're not thinking, no, I've done all this for 50 years, and all I'm going to get is another birth and another birth in the service of. Yes, this is our aspiration. We have no other aspiration. But the others cannot understand. They think, no, I want big position. I want that dhanam. I want that janam. I want that sundarim. I want all that. No. But Chaitanya said no. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming and listening. And it seems like Bhakti Ryan has a question, because she's going to get the microphone. Otherwise, I put it up on top. It was on top of the table. Did you find it? Yes. Oh, you had both of them. Krishna Kripa never has questions. He's I'm surprised with all your hacky sack experience and all these things.
Okay. Krishna. Thank you for the class, Prabhu.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, it was an interesting verse, and you were talking a little bit about in the beginning about how pure devotional service comes in someone's heart. Like Arjuna, he didn't necessarily need to spend so long getting the qualification to perform devotional service. He simply heard the instructions from Krishna and he just simply did it. And it was very straightforward, it was very simple. But like you mentioned, the Srila Prabhupada said, it took 45 minutes for Arjuna, it's taking 45,000 years for us. So, a lot of time we're going in different ways to get some kind of qualification to perform devotional service. So I was reflecting on that. What is the qualification to perform surrender to Krishna, Vasudeva Saramati? What is the qualification to come to the point of surrender? It almost seems like there is a qualification because, I was just reading this in the third canto, and we did discuss it in this class also when we were covering that section of Kapila Deva's instructions to Devahuti. And Devahuti says, someone who's chanting the name of your lordship, that person has done all ritualistic activities, he's performed all sacrifices, done all austerities, in order to come to the position of surrendering to you. Even would to speak of surrendering to you, just chanting your name. Prabhupada said in the purport, even once chanting your name. So, if we're not at the point of surrender, and we can understand that we're not at the point of surrender, what do we do? What is the gradual elevation like? What are the necessary qualifications to come to that point?
Very good question. But that we mentioned that there's that what Prabhupada described in that that verse, Mat Karma Krin, Mat Paramo. Let's pull it up. Yeah. And Prabhupada says that this verse is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. I mean, 700 verses, 18 chapters. And Prabhupada said that this verse is considered to be the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Is that 1055 or 1155? Yes, let's see how it says here. We want to get that online database. Mat karma krin mat paramo mad bhakta sangha vajata nirvara sarva bhuteshu yasamam eti pandava. My dear Arjuna, he who engages in my pure devotional service, free from the contamination of fruitive activities and mental speculation, he who works for me, who makes me the supreme goal of his life, and who is friendly to every living entity, he certainly comes to me. Anyone who wants to approach the supreme of all the personalities of Godhead on the Krishna Loka planet in the spiritual sky, and be intimately connected with the supreme personality of Godhead, supreme personality Krishna, must take this formula as stated by the Supreme himself. Therefore, this verse is considered to be the essence of Bhagavad Gita. So where it seems, after so many attempts and so many lifetimes, and then if someone reads this, first he has to have the appreciation of the Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna is, who is Krishna? And why should I even pay attention to this? But then to come across this, that of all the 700 slokas in Bhagavad Gita, this is the essence. And it's such a simple thing. Free from contamination of previous fruitive activities and mental speculation. In other places it says free from sinful activities. But it's the same point, is that he has to situate himself properly, and that means he's no longer performing sinful activities. He has to be free from the contamination of his past karma. That means he's engaging in the cleansing, the purification process of chanting Hare Krishna. And mental speculation. So that means he's accepting that the words of the spiritual master, that the words of the Shastra require no independent commentary from my mind. I don't need to try to, what is that? Atmavan Manyate Jagat. Prabhupada said that this is the mentality of those in the material world, is that they see everything through their own mind's eyes. He thinks that everyone in the universe thinks like him. Atmavan Manyate Jagat. That everyone thinks like him. And so this is in such a simple way, because what is mental speculation? Is that I'm not, if I have a doubt, I simply have to open the Gita or approach someone who's been serving, like Srila Prabhupada, who's faithfully served his spiritual master. He actually is very interesting. Prabhupada knew that he was the pet of his guru. He knew that, but he didn't exploit that. He didn't try. Matter of fact, he remained in such a humble position. His godbrothers were envious because he was a grahasta. And they called him Pacha Grahasta. You know what Pacha means? Filthy, useless. Call him a Pacha Grahasta. And so we can understand that by this degrading mentality, to think that a person who is not in the same ashram, they're all proud of their saffron cloth. The saffron. They're all proud of their so-called preaching activities. But they couldn't recognize the devotional qualities of this person. And so one time, and I've told this story before, but it bears repeating. Just after Prabhupada left, we were gone from Vrindavan to Puri. We were on our way to Bhubaneswar. We were traveling. We went to pay our respects to the birthplace of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which is there on Temple Road. It's the former DM's residence, district magistrate. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was posted there, and his wife gave birth to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta there, and there's a little birthing hut. In those days, and still, they either constructed a birthing hut or they used an existing building, but childbirth never took place in the home. Wasn't considered to be a clean activity, necessarily. You can also see where Prabhupada took birth under the jackfruit tree. It was the same similar situation, a birthing hut outside the main residence. Have you visited that yet? No. So we were there, and it was a very emotional time for us. But at the same time, we wanted to, just complete, do our pilgrimage. And so when we came into the residence, there's a foyer before you enter, which is where a guest would be received. There are benches, and then there's main doors, and the doors were shut. So when we went into the foyer, it's dark, and then as we entered, we could see that there are other people there. Because the sunlight in India is so blinding, if you enter a dark place, you can't see momentarily. So and we saw all these sannyasis, Prabhupada's godbrothers, all gathered there. And then we had been traveling, so we didn't realize, because we were not on the same wavelength, that this was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's, it was his disappearance. Disappearance or appearance? I can't remember which one. It was January. So it could have been either, because he disappeared in December. But anyway, so January. So anyway, it was either appearance or disappearance date. I would have to look it up, go back on, probably appearance. Anyway, the other one was gathered there, and the doors were closed because they were getting ready to set up. They'd already had the ceremony, and now they were setting up the courtyard for the feast. Everybody stepped outside. So when we walked in, there was like a very awkward silence. All these Westerners had just showed up, to this very intimate gathering of, Prabhupada's godbrothers, direct disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And here we are, we're the interlopers, we're the malechas, we're the yavanas, we're not really qualified according to them. And they made it known in many ways, in various They wouldn't let us, in Mayapur, they wouldn't let us stay in the Dharmshala at the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Imagine that they wouldn't let the Prabhupada's Western disciples stay in the Dharmshala, part of the temple. No. Yeah. So anyway, so we're here at this situation, and one person spoke. At the time, I didn't know who it was. It was Krishna Das Babaji. He spoke, and he said, "You're Swamiji's disciples," because they all called Prabhupada or Swami Bhaktivedanta or Swamiji. So we said, "Yeah, because you can't, because Srila Prabhupada is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta to them." And so they didn't, we would always respectfully say, "Yes, we're Bhaktivedanta Swami's disciples." And he looked around. He was a very elevated soul. He didn't speak much. He only did kirtan. Anything, if you asked him any question, he would just say, "Just chant Hare Krishna." That was what he would always say. Just chant Hare Krishna. And so he looked around and he saw the demeanor, the way these other sannyasis were regarding us. And he said, then he turned around and he looked at us again. He said, "Do you know what they called your Guru Maharaj?" And we thought, "Oh, this is a little delicate now. We're Westerners. We're ready for a fight. I think we're going to go to blows any second." And then he said, we didn't say anything. What do you say? And then he said it again. "Do you know what they called your spiritual master?" And he looked at us and he looked at them. And he said, they called him a pachagrahasta. And that was the first time we'd heard that. And he said they called him a useless grahasta. He translated it for us. They called him a useless grahasta. And then he turned around and he looked, and so we thought, this is bad. We're going to really have to go down. Then he turned around and he looked at the other sannyasis, and we didn't know what was going on. He turned around and he looked at them and he said, "Just see, who is useless now?" Who is useless now? Because Prabhupada had done what they could not do. He had followed the orders of his spiritual master. He had gone to preach in the Western world. And he'd made disciples out of the Malechas and Yavanas. And he slapped his thigh when he said this. Just see who's useless now. Unforgettable moment. And of course, then after that, they invited us in. We sat down and we had a feast together with them. And they served us because in the Gaudiya Math, the sannyasis serve the prasadam. So they had to serve the Malechas and the Yavanas, at that time. So it was a very interesting pastime, even in Prabhupada's presence. So we have to always, it's not by appearance. It's by hearing. So this Tadvidi Pranipatena Pariprashana 7, one has to hear and render service. Just to hear and render service. Because otherwise, how would we know? How did these Westerners know that Prabhupada was different from all these other bogus gurus? How do you know? Because someone who's speaking the truth, the weight of the truth, the reality of the truth comes completely manifests itself for those who are a little sincere, a little bit open-minded. And so that's how Prabhupada was able to capture everybody. Simply by his purity. Purity is the force. So I never doubt what one person could do. Prabhupada changed the world. And if you get a chance, you should listen to these morning walk conversations. Prabhupada speaks very candidly with his disciples. You don't get that in the books. So this association with the pure devotee in this way is very edifying and enlightening. So it's absolutely worth the time to hear it directly, to read it. I'm a better listener than I am a reader. It's just the way I'm wired. That I can hear all day long, but if I have to read, it gets, I have a short attention span for that. Hearing, oh, no problem. 24 hours a day you can hear. That's why these little players are so handy. You know, you just turn it on in the morning, you do your business. Every time you have an opportunity, you just flick it on and Prabhupada's voice comes through. It is the nectar for which we are always anxious. You know, so you get this direct association. You know, so there's any other questions? Get the association, Bhaktivinoda. Do you have one of those players by any chance? You have your phone. Yeah, of course your phone is there, but you gotta takes all the Wi-Fi. These are just recharge it at night. You play it for days and days and doesn't need to be recharged. And just one lecture after another, and you also get the continuity. Probably giving a series. You're hearing all the morning walks in Bombay in 74, and then all the morning walks in Mayapur in 74 and 75. And you know, you get this. You feel like you're in the moment. You know, literally, you feel like you're on the walk. It's amazing. I can't adequately describe it, but you'll experience it. Yes, Prabhuji. Huh? I can't hear you because I'm. No, this. Yeah. Yeah. Next, you were in India. Did you ever pick up one of those little players? They're so handy. Once you've got it, you'll never want to use another device. Just becomes so handy. The phone becomes very inconvenient compared to this. Plus, you can go to any. All you have to do is it has an index. There's 2,200 hours of lectures. You know, it's amazing. And you just listen. And probably that was his. He said, my hobby was to hear my spiritual master's lectures. He said, that's my hobby. And if we can develop that hobby, we'll be well situated. The best hobby. Grantharaj Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada Bhaktivedanta Purports ki, Gaur Premanandi. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki.